No one in the neighborhood thought anything important would happen in Clara Whitmore's backyard. It was just an old patch of land behind a quiet white house on Maple Street. The grass was uneven, the soil dry, and the wooden fence leaned slightly to one side as if it were tired of standing. But Clara did not see a broken yard. She saw a chance to begin again. Clara was 36 and newly divorced. She had left behind a long marriage that slowly emptied her heart. There had been no loud fights at the end, no dramatic goodbye, just silence. The kind of silence that grows between two people until it feels wider than the ocean. When she moved into the small house, she told herself she wanted peace. No more heavy conversations. No more trying to fix something that could not be fixed. On her first morning there, stood in the backyard with a cup of coffee and looked at the wild mess in front of her. The grass reached her ankles. Old flower beds were covered with weeds. The soil looked hard and forgotten. It felt honest, unloved, but still alive. That made her breathe easier. She decided she would build a garden, not because she knew much about plants. She didn't, but because she needed something to care for that would not walk away. The next weekend, she drove to a garden store and bought bags of soil, small rose bushes, seeds, gloves, and simple tools. She did not think about how heavy everything was until she tried to carry it from her car to the yard. The sun was bright, and sweat quickly formed on her forehead. She lifted one bag of soil and managed a few steps before stopping to catch her breath. That looks heavier than it should be. The voice came from next door. Clara turned and saw him for the first time. Daniel Alvarez stood by the low fence, separating their yards. He wore a plain gray t-shirt and jeans, his dark hair slightly messy from the wind. He looked young but not careless. His expression held quiet concern, not amusement. "I'm fine," Clara replied automatically. He stepped closer. "I can help. It's no trouble." She hesitated. Since the divorce, she had trained herself not to depend on anyone. Even small help felt dangerous. The bag really was heavy. "All right," she said softly. Daniel moved quickly, lifting the bag with ease and carrying it into her yard. Clara noticed the simple way he moved, confident but not proud. He placed the bag near the old flower bed and brushed his hands together. "You're new here, right?" He asked, double quotes. "Yes. I moved in last week. My mom and I live next door. I'm Daniel." Clara, they shook hands briefly. His grip was warm and steady. It's not too strong, not weak. Just present. "You're starting a garden?" he asked, looking around. "I'm trying to." He smiled. "It'll look great. My mom loves roses. She says they're difficult, but worth it." Clara glanced at the small rose bushes still sitting in her car. "I guess I'll find out." Without asking, Daniel went back for the rest of the bags. She watched him from a distance, unsure how to feel. Gratitude mixed with something she could not yet name. It had been a long time since someone stepped in to make something easier for her. When everything was finally in the yard, she thanked him again. "If you need help digging, I'm around," he said before heading back to his house. That evening, Clara worked alone. She tied her hair back, put on gloves, and began pulling weeds. The earth resisted at first. The roots were deep. She had to press hard with the shovel to break the soil. It felt almost personal, like pushing through the hard shell she had built around her own heart. The next afternoon, Daniel appeared again. He leaned slightly over the fence. "How's it going?" She looked up, brushing dirt from her hands. "Slow." He stepped through the small gate, connecting their yards. "Want help?" This time, she didn't hesitate as long. "Sure." They worked side by side. Daniel showed her how to loosen the soil properly, how to space the plants so they would have room to grow. He did not talk too much. He focused on the task, explaining things in simple words. Clara found herself listening closely, not just to his instructions, but to the calm rhythm of his voice. The sun moved slowly across the sky as they worked. Sweat covered their arms, dirt smudged their clothes. At one point, their hands reached for the same small shovel. Their fingers brushed lightly. Clara pulled back first. "Sorry," she said quickly. "It's okay," Daniel replied, equally quick. They both looked away for a moment. It was nothing, just a small accident. But something quiet shifted in the air. They finished planting the first row of roses before evening. Clara stepped back to look at the small line of green leaves standing in fresh soil. "It already looks better," she said. "It's just the beginning." Daniel replied. The words felt bigger than they should have. Over the next few days, Daniel continued to stop by. Sometimes he brought lemonade. Sometimes he came with gardening gloves already on, as if he had planned it all morning. Clara told herself it was just neighborly kindness. They talked while working. At first, about simple things: his college classes, her job at a local bookstore, the weather, the neighborhood. Daniel had studied architecture. He spoke about buildings the way some people spoke about dreams. Clara liked the way his eyes lit up when he described the feeling of creating something strong and beautiful. "You build things that last," she said once. "That's the goal," he replied. "Things that don't fall apart." The sentence hung between them. Clara pressed her lips together and focused on trimming a small bush. She wondered if he realized how those words felt to her. As days passed, the garden slowly transformed. Weeds disappeared. The soil softened. New plants filled empty spaces. Color began to show, and Clara began to notice Daniel more carefully. The way he listened without interrupting. The way he noticed small details, like when she seemed tired, or when her smile didn't fully reach her eyes. He never asked direct questions about her past, KZ, but his quiet attention made her feel seen. One late afternoon, they sat on the back steps to rest. The sky turned orange and pink. A soft breeze moved through the yard. "Why a garden, Daniel?" asked Clara. Thought for a moment. "Because growing something feels better than losing something." He didn't ask what she had lost. Instead, he nodded slowly. "That makes sense." There was maturity in his response that surprised her. She studied his profile in the fading light. He was younger, yes, but there was depth there. Not the careless energy she expected from someone in his early 20s. Something steadier. And that realization unsettled her. She reminded herself of the difference in their ages. She reminded herself that he was her neighbor's son. She reminded herself that she had promised to protect her heart. Yet every evening when she looked out at the garden, she thought of him. One morning she woke up earlier than usual. The sunlight streamed through her curtains. She felt a strange excitement, like she was looking forward to something. She shook her head at herself. It's just gardening, she thought. But when she stepped outside, Daniel was already there, kneeling by the tomato plants, adjusting a small wooden support frame. "Morning," he said, glancing up with an easy smile. "You're early, so are you." They laughed softly. The moment felt simple, yet full. As they worked, Clara realized something important. She was not just rebuilding her yard. She was rebuilding parts of herself. And somehow, Daniel had become part of that process. Still, she kept her distance emotionally. She never shared too much. She avoided conversations about love, about marriage, about regret. She stayed in safe territory. But feelings do not always wait for permission. One evening, while watering the roses, Daniel asked, "Do you ever think about starting over completely?" Clara paused. Water spilled over the edge of the soil. "I already did," she replied quietly. He looked at her, really looked at her, and in that look, she felt exposed. The air between them changed again, subtle but clear. Not loud, not dramatic. Just heavier with unspoken thoughts. Clara turned off the water hose and stepped back. The garden around them was no longer empty or wild, was growing strong. Small buds had begun to form on the roses. She realized something at that moment. Gardens require patience, so do hearts. But sometimes without warning, first signs of something deeper appear. And she was no longer sure she could pretend not to see them.
The touch lasted only a second, but Clara felt it long after Daniel stepped back. It happened on a warm afternoon when they were fixing the wooden border around the tomato plants. Their hands reached for the same hammer. Their fingers brushed. The contact was light, almost nothing, yet it sent a quick wave through her chest. She pulled her hand away too fast, knocking the tool to the ground. "Sorry," she said, bending to pick it up. "It's okay," Daniel answered, but his voice was softer than usual. They finished the work in silence. The garden was nearly complete now. Rows of vegetables stood upright. The roses had small red buds. The lawn looked trimmed and clean. Everything seemed settled, yet something between them felt unsettled. That night, Clara could not sleep. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling. The house was quiet except for the faint hum of the refrigerator. She turned to one side, then the other. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Daniel's face in the late sunlight. The way his jaw tightened slightly when he focused. The way he smiled without trying to impress. She sat up with a sigh. "This is foolish," she whispered to herself. He was younger. Much younger. He had plans, dreams, a future that stretched far ahead. She had already lived through love once. She knew how quickly warmth could turn into distance. She knew how promises could fade. She walked to the window and looked down at the garden. Moonlight covered the plants in silver light. It looked peaceful. Innocent. She pressed her hand to the cool glass. "Nothing has happened," she told herself. "You are imagining things," but her heart refused to calm down. The next afternoon, Daniel came over with 2 glasses of lemonade. He handed one to her without speaking. Their fingers did not touch this time. He kept a careful space between them. They worked quietly for a while. Clara trimmed dead leaves from the rose bushes. Daniel adjusted the watering hose. "You seem tired," he said finally. "I didn't sleep much." He nodded but did not ask why. That restraint made it harder. She wanted him to say something careless so she could blame him. She wanted him to act immature so she could remind herself why this was impossible. But he didn't. He moved with patience. He respected her space. "Daniel," she said suddenly. He looked up. "Maybe we should take a break from this." "From all of it?" He frowned slightly. "From gardening? From spending so much time together?" The words felt sharp in her mouth. He stood slowly. "Did I do something wrong?" "No. That's not it." She forced herself to stay calm. "It's just better this way." "Better for who?" he asked. She didn't answer, because she didn't know. He searched her face, looking for a clear reason. When he found none, he stepped back. "If that's what you want," he said quietly. There was no anger in his voice. Just disappointment. He walked toward the gate. Before leaving, he paused. "I never meant to make things complicated." Then he left. Clara stood alone in the yard, gripping the small gardening scissors too tightly. The silence that followed felt heavier than she expected. Over the next few days, Daniel did not come by. The garden grew anyway. The roses began to open fully, their red petals bright and bold. The tomatoes turned from green to soft orange. Everything was alive and thriving. But Clara felt the opposite. She went through her routine: work at the bookstore, quiet dinners, early nights. She avoided looking toward the fence. She avoided thinking about the easy conversations they used to share. On the 4th day, she heard laughter from next door. Daniel's voice mixed with another girl's. Clara froze in her kitchen. She moved slowly toward the window. A young woman stood in Mrs. Alvarez's yard. She was pretty, confident, close to Daniel's age. They were looking at something on his phone, standing closer than necessary. Clara stepped back from the window. Of course, she thought. He belongs with someone like her. The realization hurt more than she expected. She told herself this was proof she had done the right thing. He needed someone his own age. Someone without past scars. Someone who didn't carry silent fears. But that night, she barely touched her dinner. The next afternoon, she forced herself into the garden again. She knelt near the roses, pulling small weeds that had started to return. The sun was hot. Sweat rolled down her back. She heard the gate creak open. Her heart jumped before she could stop it. Daniel stood a few steps away. "Alone, I just came to get my gloves," he said. "I left them here." She nodded, unable to trust her voice. He walked toward the small wooden bench where he used to sit. He picked up the gloves slowly. "The roses look good," he added. "Thank you." Another silence stretched between them. Not comfortable like before. Tight. "Fragile, the girl the other day," he began. Clara looked up too fast. "You don't have to explain." "I wasn't going to," he said gently. "She's my cousin." Heat rushed to her face. "I didn't assume anything," she lied. A small smile appeared on his lips, but it faded quickly. "Clara, if this is about age, it is about everything," she cut in. "It's about reality." He stepped closer. "Reality doesn't mean we stop feeling things." Her breath caught. He had said it clearly now. No hiding. No confusion. She stood up, brushing dirt from her knees. "Daniel, you're young. I know how old I am. You don't understand how complicated life becomes. You don't understand how clear I feel when I'm with you. The words landed hard. Clara turned away. This is not fair. To who? He asked again, echoing his earlier question. She had no answer, because the truth was simple and terrifying. She felt it too. The days after that conversation were even harder. They avoided each other physically, but emotionally, they were more connected than before. Every time she stepped into the yard, she sensed his presence next door. Every time he heard her gate open, he paused whatever he was doing. One evening, as the sun began to set, Clara accidentally cut her finger while trimming a thorny stem. She gasped softly as a thin line of blood appeared. Before she could even reach for a cloth, Daniel was there. What happened? Nothing. It's small. He took her hand carefully, examining the cut. His touch was steady but gentle. He pulled a clean handkerchief from his pocket and wrapped it around her finger. The closeness made her heart race. She could feel his breath near her cheek. You should be more careful, he said quietly. I usually am. Their eyes met. Time slowed. For a second, neither moved. The world around them faded, the fence, the houses, the distant sound of cars. There was only the space between their faces. Clara stepped back first. This is exactly why we need distance, she whispered. Daniel dropped his hand slowly. Distance won't erase it. She knew he was right, but fear was louder than desire. That night, she made a decision. The next morning, when Daniel came out to check his mailbox, Clara walked over. She kept her posture straight, her expression calm. I think it's better if we stop seeing each other like this, she said. No more gardening together. No more long talks. He stared at her, searching for doubt. You're pushing me away, he said. I'm protecting both of us. From what? From being happy? The question hit her deeply. But she shook her head. From making a mistake. He studied her face for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. If that's what you believe, he said. No anger. No drama. Just quiet acceptance. That hurt the most. He turned and walked back into his yard. Clara remained standing by the fence long after he disappeared inside. The following week felt endless. She avoided the backyard altogether. She left for work earlier and returned later. She tried to fill her evenings with books and television, but silence has weight. The house felt empty again. The garden, once a place of comfort, now reminded her of what she had chosen to lose. One afternoon, dark clouds gathered quickly. Wind began to shake the tree branches. Clara glanced outside and saw one of the tomato frames leaning dangerously to one side. Without thinking, she rushed into the yard. The wind grew stronger. Leaves flew across the grass. She grabbed the wooden frame, trying to hold it steady, but it was heavier than she expected. Rain started suddenly, cold and sharp. She struggled to lift the frame back into place. Her foot slipped slightly in the mud, then another pair of hands grabbed the wood firmly. Daniel. He had come out at the same time. Together, they pushed the frame upright. The rain soaked their clothes within seconds. Thunder rumbled in the distance. They stood close under the gray sky, breathing hard. For a moment, neither spoke. Water dripped from Daniel's hair onto his forehead. Clara's heart pounded loudly in her chest. I tried, he said over the sound of the rain. I tried to stay away. She swallowed. You should have. I don't want to. The honesty in his voice broke something inside her. The storm around them felt smaller than the storm inside her heart. She realized then that distance had not made her stronger. It had only made her lonely, and as the rain continued to fall, she knew this was no longer just about gardening. It was about whether she was brave enough to let herself feel again. The rain had started suddenly, fast and sharp, soaking the garden in minutes. Clara rushed outside to save the fragile plants from bending or breaking under the force of the storm. She grabbed the wooden tomato frame, her hand slipping slightly in the wet mud. She tried to hold it steady, but the wind pushed hard against her. Panic fluttered in her chest as she struggled to keep the plants safe. She wished someone was there to help. She didn't expect anyone, but when she looked up, there he was, Daniel. He appeared from next door, soaked from head to toe, his dark hair plastered to his forehead, his clothes clinging to him. Without hesitation, he stepped toward her and grabbed the frame from her hands, steadying it immediately. His hands were firm, warm despite the rain, and he worked without hesitation. Got it, he said, his voice steady but edged with urgency. Together, they lifted and secured the frame, mud splashing around their boots. Their arms brushed repeatedly. Clara felt her heart race with each accidental touch. The rain soaked them completely, but she hardly noticed. I thought I should check on you, Daniel said, his eyes searching hers as if the storm had cleared all walls between them. Clara tried to step back, tried to find the careful distance she had promised herself, but her wet shoes slipped slightly on the muddy ground. Daniel's hands shot out instinctively, catching her by the elbows. For a second, they just stood there, rain streaming down their faces, breathing hard, staring at each other. I didn't want to come, he admitted, his voice low. I told myself to stay away, to give you space, to let things settle. But I couldn't. Clara swallowed, the words settling heavily in her chest. Daniel, she started, but couldn't find the right thing to say. She wanted to scold him, to remind him of boundaries, to explain why this was complicated. But the sound of his voice, the intensity in his gaze, stripped away all her carefully constructed walls. The rain hammered harder, drumming a chaotic rhythm over the garden. The roses, now in full bloom, glistened under the storm, their petals heavy with water. The tomatoes shook in their frames. Everything around them was alive, vibrant, messy, and urgent. The storm mirrored the storm in Clara's chest. She had tried to protect herself from feelings, from longing, from temptation, but here it was anyway, undeniable and immediate. Daniel took a small step closer, reducing the space between them to nothing. Clara felt her breath catch. She wanted to step back, but her wet shoes refused to move fast enough, and she found herself standing too close. He reached out, not touching, just hovering, as if waiting for her permission to cross the invisible line. She didn't move away. I can't pretend, he said. I can't act like I don't feel this, whatever this is. I've tried. Every day, I've tried to convince myself that it's not right. But I can't. His dark eyes were intense, sincere, desperate. Clara's chest tightened. She had felt the same struggle. Every night, she lay awake thinking of him. The past, the rules, the fear, all of it seemed irrelevant. There was only the truth between them, raw and undeniable. Clara reached up to wipe rain from her face, and Daniel did the same. Their hands brushed again. This time, neither moved away. It was no longer accidental. It was acknowledgement. Recognition. Permission. The storm around them intensified, wind bending the taller plants, rain drenching the petals, but they did not notice. Their world had shrunk to that small patch of wet earth, the frame they had saved, and each other. I've never felt this before, Daniel admitted, his voice almost drowned by the rain, yet it reached her clearly. It's not just admiration or friendship. It's more. So much more. Clara's throat tightened. I felt it too, she admitted, her voice breaking slightly. I didn't want to. I tried to stay away. But I can't stop thinking about you. A bolt of thunder rolled in the distance, shaking the garden. Clara jumped slightly, and Daniel instinctively took her hand to steady her. This time, she didn't pull away. Their fingers entwined naturally, fitting together as if they had been made to. The cold rain dripped between their fingers, soaking their palms, but it didn't matter. They stayed close, standing among the roses and tomatoes, mud on their boots, soaked to the bone, hearts racing in perfect sync. It was not reckless passion or youthful folly. It was honesty. It was acknowledgement of longing, of attraction, of connection. It was mature, painful, thrilling, and undeniable. Daniel's hand moved slowly to her shoulder, steadying her as she trembled from the cold and emotion. You're beautiful, he said, quietly. Not just outside, inside. You've been through so much, and yet, you keep giving. You keep caring. Clara looked down at the soaked soil beneath her boots, then back at him. Her chest was heavy with emotion. I didn't expect this, with you, she whispered. I didn't think it would happen again for me. Neither did I, Daniel admitted. But it did. And maybe it's not about expecting. Maybe it's about noticing what's real when it's in front of us. The rain began to lighten, the thunder rolling away into the distance. The sky was a mix of gray and soft purple. Droplets hung on leaves and petals like tiny diamonds. The garden they had built together looked transformed, not just by the storm but by their presence in it. Every rose, every tomato, every small detail seemed more alive. Clara's heart felt full and heavy all at once. She realized that life was unpredictable. Love was unpredictable. But sometimes, the most unexpected moments were the ones that healed old wounds and created new hope. Clara's eyes met his. She could see honesty, vulnerability, and care reflected there. She wanted to speak, to explain, to justify her feelings, but no words were necessary. The connection between them was undeniable. For the first time in years, Clara felt alive in a way she had almost forgotten. She realized that love did not always arrive on time, in the right place, or in the way society approved. Sometimes it came quietly, unpredictably, in a storm, in a garden, in the form of someone who understood your silence and respected your pain. I want this, she said finally, her voice steady despite the rain dripping down her face. I want to see where this goes. Daniel's smile was small but full of relief. Me too, he said. I've wanted it for a long time. They stayed close for a few more moments, hands entwined, breathing in sync, hearts aligned. The rain had stopped completely now, leaving the garden sparkling with droplets. The roses glistened. The tomatoes stood upright. The wooden frame they had saved was sturdy, a small triumph in the wet earth. Everything seemed brighter, sharper, more alive than before. Clara realized then that life could surprise her in ways she had never expected. Love could arrive at the most unusual times, in forms that seemed impossible, yet when it did, it was undeniable. The garden had been their shared work, a safe space, a world they had built together. And now it had become the place where their hearts had quietly, fiercely connected. "I guess we'll have to keep working on this garden," Daniel said, his voice breaking the quiet with a hint of humor. "And maybe, keep working on ourselves too." Clara laughed softly, the sound bright and free. "I think we can manage both," she said. They began walking back toward the house, water dripping from their hair, mud on their boots, hearts still racing. The rain had passed, but the storm inside them had settled into something new, a gentle, thrilling, unpredictable hope. For the first time in years, Clara felt that life had opened a door for her again. And beside her, Daniel felt the same. The garden, the storm, the unexpected moment, it had changed everything. As they entered the house, soaked and laughing softly, Clara realized something important. Sometimes the most powerful moments are quiet, tender, and unplanned. Sometimes, love appears in the rain, in the mud, in the shared effort of creating something beautiful. And sometimes, the most unexpected moments are the ones that finally make a heart feel alive again. From that day on, the garden became more than just a space for plants. It became a memory of a moment that changed everything. Every rose, every tomato, every green leaf reminded them of the afternoon when the rain fell, the wind blew, and two hearts found each other in the simplest, most profound way. It was not reckless. It was not foolish. It was real, and Clara and Daniel, standing together among the roses, knew that the future, uncertain as it was, suddenly felt full of possibility. They had faced fear, hesitation, and caution, and had discovered something worth risking it all for, the beginning of a love that neither had expected but both desperately needed. The storm had passed. The garden was safe. And in that quiet aftermath, surrounded by the blooms they had nurtured together, Clara finally understood that some moments are meant to change everything. And this was one of them. She looked at Daniel, and he looked at her. No words were necessary. Their smiles said it all. A new chapter had begun. The garden was no longer just a garden. It was a symbol. A memory. A promise, and in the heart of that small backyard, with petals glistening, mud beneath their boots, and hands intertwined, Clara and Daniel realized something wonderful. Life, love, and the most unexpected moments can grow beautifully, even in the rain.